Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Conscious Counsel podcast with me, your host, Cory Sterling, and I'm joined by Kristen Ricupero, who is the founder of Financial Fitness Coaching and a certified Profit First professional. Kristen, what's going on?
Hey, Cory, how are you doing? Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm so happy to have you, and it just so happens that we are talking about one of my favorite all-time subjects in this podcast episode. We're going to talk about money mindset and how it affects health and wellness professionals. How do you feel about that?
I'm ready to go. It's one of the most critical pieces, I think, before we really get to talking about the innards of things. So,
Yeah, and I think the idea of the conversation is to keep it high level and just even talk about what money mindset is and why it's so important. And I have my own experiences and stories, but I'm way more curious to hear and learn a little bit about yours. Maybe you could start off by explaining why money mindset could be the biggest lever in finances, more important than spreadsheets or anything else like that.
yeah, absolutely. So, just from the very top level, right? Money mindset is simply just the way that we think about what we're doing. It's the way we think about money, it's the stories that we're telling ourselves. And these stories aren't things that we're choosing to do, right? They're subconscious. They're things that we have been ingrained since we have been children. They start as early as 2, 3, 4 years old by what we see in our households, by what we watch, by how our parents talk, by how they fight about money, how they don't fight about money, all of these things. So when we're talking about business owners specifically and getting into the business actions, we're already coming in with a set of beliefs that we don't even realize, saying business is going to be so hard, or man, I can't charge so much money for that, or why are people going to pay me? Our business owners that we love to work with are great at what they do, right? They are the best fitness professionals, gym owners, wellness professionals. They're just great. But they didn't get into this. They didn't realize how hard the money side of it things can be. So the biggest lever of it before we even get into the spreadsheets is if you're telling yourselves that this is going to be hard, I can't charge, or we have issues with having these conversations and these boundaries, we're not going to do the things. We're going to purposely sabotage our own efforts.
Yeah, that's a very real thing. I'm curious if you know if it's accessible and if you're comfortable sharing. Did you have a money story before you rewrote your own money mindset?
I definitely did. And so I came from being a spender early in life. Um, my parents from both my family came from being business owners. My dad owned an insurance agency. My mom helped him out. They got it from my grandparents. Very involved in those things, but I watched money not really being talked about at all growing up. So to me, there wasn't any consequences. We didn't talk about managing. It was just a thing that we had. And so through that, as I did my own journey, I realized why I became a spender is because I just didn't, I didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know there was like a finite supply, right? And so I'd get money, I'd spend money, I'd say, I can make some more, no big deal. Do the same thing over and on. So when I finally started getting my money journey together, early 2013, it kind of transformed and I went too far in the other direction, becoming money vigilant, which really means that I'm like super holding on to it, right? Can't spend, have to save, 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 can't have fun. And through the last 10 years now, as a financial coach and just as a human, I've had to really find a happy balance of how do we have fun with our money and make sure they're protected for the future at the same time.
Yeah, it's such a fine balance. And for me, when I talk about money mindset, whenever I coach clients, because sometimes I coach clients as well on business, I always say that until you fix your money mindset, you can make all of the changes to your business. You can have all the coaches and do all of the things, but until you figure out your money mindset, it's not going to make any difference. And it's like having a bucket of water with a hole in the bottom. You can keep pouring more water in, but until you fix your mindset around it, it's not going to make a difference. Very quickly for me, because this was so transformational, that's why I want to share. I read a book called Worth It by Amanda Steinberg. I don't know if you read that or you recommend it to your clients, but it really helped me on my money mindset journey. When I lost my first tooth, my parents put $2 Canadian, it's worth a lot, put $2 Canadian under the pillow. And I remember I woke up and I was crying and I gave it back to my dad. And I said, you have to keep it so that our family will always have money. I'm like, I don't know where that came from, but that was very real for me. And then that was my money mindset for so long. And then I read this book and then I recreated my money mindset. And that was so helpful for me. But it's so foundational because the systems, nothing happens. Like you said, you'll self-sabotage unless you have it. And I think your journey is a really interesting one of being on both ends of the extreme and then finding that happy ground in the middle. So I want to move to talking about the professionals that you work with. And I know you work with a lot of entrepreneurs who didn't get into business because they love money stuff. Health, wellness, yoga, Pilates, fitness. They are ambitious, but it's not like, oh, I'm going to make the most money I could ever make off this. They do it because it's a passion. So I'm curious, what's the most common money mindset block you see for heart leading health and wellness business owners?
I mean, one of the most limiting that we see is just simply that, either I can't charge for that or people aren't going to pay me a lot, or even I don't need to. I want to do this because I know it's helping people and all I need to do is pay my bills. That's the most limiting belief that we can possibly have because we're really kind of just pushing ourselves down. And what ends up happening is it's exactly what they do. And they're struggling to paycheck, bill to bill, invoice to invoice in their own business. And yes, they're helping people passionately, but they're suffering at the other end of it. And on the business owners, they're the people who are in our communities putting on events and sponsoring things, sponsoring Little League, coaching the teams, being there. And when we can't support our own families, and I think a lot of people think it's greed, right? Like in their mind, they're like, I'm greedy if I want to make a lot of money. And no, it's just about supporting your family, supporting your community, doing the things without the stress and the headaches so that you can have the best and most ultimate life possible,
Yeah,
right?
I know we both want that for our clients. So if we identify the block that you shared, it's like, okay, well, I want to help people and I want to make a difference in their lives, and oh, as long as I'm not losing money, it's okay and it's fine, and I don't have to charge for this. So my question is, where do you think that block comes from? What are the origins from it? Is it more about how people were raised, their past experiences, or something else that we haven't touched on?
I think all all mindset issues come from the way you're raised. But that being said, right, two people can be raised identical ways, but it's the things that they're picked up on, like an identical, like socioeconomic, right? But the things that they pick up on, the words that are being used, hey, we can't afford that, or no, you don't need that. And just the words that are ingrained, and that's generational, right? I recognize patterns still that my mom says, that my grandma said, that, her mom said, and we're still trying to break those things when you really start to dig into it. So I do think that it's things that that block comes from what was learned, but I don't think it's tied directly to business at that point.
Yeah, totally. And when you start working with a client, what are, because I'm sure someone's listening to this and they're thinking, I would love to know what my money mindset is. What's sort of the process that you begin to tackle that giant?
It really varies from client to client because everything that we do is highly customized. But, a lot of times we just start with talking about their money story. Our initial sessions with all of our clients are simply learning more about their goals, their past, their challenges, their wins, where they came from, and helping them to lightly uncover that. I'll be honest, a lot of our clients don't want to get into mindset stuff. So it depends on the client and how hard they really want to go, whether we dive right into it or if we kind of start to ask pressing questions to pull at the surface and learn more about them and then highlight the things that they're saying and help them make those connections.
Yeah, mirroring is so powerful in that sense. I'm just curious, what does it look like when someone shifts from a scarcity or avoidance mindset to feeling confident or abundant with money? And can you share an example of a transformation that you've seen personally?
Oh man, we have so many of them, but it's never just like an overnight switch, right? This is not a lever that just gets turned. They're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But I will say, usually in that first 4 to 6 months, there can be a lot of work done, especially when they're open to it, right? When someone's very coachable and they come in, and they recognize that. So, I mean, honestly, some of the biggest shifts that we see with people even is pricing, right? I said it before, I can't charge enough. And that's a lot of times we're talking about cash flow and the organization of money. We get organized first, but then we look and say, okay, where's the biggest hindrance? Is it expenses? Is it revenue? Is it the margins in between? And so some of the biggest transformations, and I'm trying to think of a more recent client, but um, I have one in particular, and she's actually a marketing company and agency. But once she kind of overcame and we got the organization and she realized, wow, this can be easy. She slightly overcame and went in and she was ready to dial into our pricing. And when she went into those conversations, like she was so afraid and resistant to it for the first 2 or 3 months. When she hit the point where she said, I'm ready, and she went on those conversations, she came back and she's like, I can't believe there was not a single bit of pushback. She's like, I can't believe it. And like that is exactly it. There's that fear, right? Stopping you when you're telling yourself that. And we start to remove those layers, those like unpeel the onion, and they get that level of confidence to do it. And then what happens is they have one conversation and then it unfolds, right? They're like ready to have the next one and the next one. And that's the real power in going from where they come in is maybe frightful, scared, just not sure what they're doing, not confident in their finances at all. And then they start having these more powerful conversations with their clients and pricing and whatever that needs to be. And it's like the flywheel. Good to great, right? Talks about the flywheel. It starts going and going, and then it starts to bleed into all the other areas of their business and life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so special. And you brought up a word that I want to talk about very quickly. You just brought up the word worthiness. Where do you see worthiness in money mindset stories, and what role does it play?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. People know that they have something to offer, right? Especially when we're talking about our business owners. They know they have something to offer and they know that it's good. But, again, there's something always holding them back. And it's different for everybody. So I think that that's just kind of, I mean, I don't think I have a direct answer for your question because everybody's so different with that. But I do think that's one of the biggest points that is holding them back from anything, whether it's putting them out there more in marketing, whether it's handling their money, whether it's increasing their pricing, whether it's asking directly for the sale.
Yeah. There's so many different elements of where it plays. And for me, what I always try to explain to clients, and sometimes like I just want to shake them and be like, you have to raise your prices. You have to raise your prices. But people are afraid to raise their prices. The invitation I always give to them is like, look at the value that you're offering people, right? Like, even if you look at something like a yoga studio, where, okay, let's say you charge people $120 unlimited a month, right? And you bump it up to, let's say, 240. Okay, $120 does make a difference in people's lives, but the transformation that people will go through and the person that they will become by consistently going to that yoga studio, consistently being part of the community, like that's worth so much more than $120 a month.
Right.
And that's like, I always try to get clients to focus on the value proposition. That's like one tool I encourage my clients to think about when it comes to raising their prices. Does that resonate with you at all?
Well, absolutely. So we talk a lot about value pricing, right? Instead of our hourly or per session or, kind of any of those other models. Because again, that's kind of talking about the transformation in that. But sometimes it has to break down even to doing exercise with that person. So a yoga studio like that, okay, how many hours would this potential ideal client actually come in? How many sessions? What's their ideal state, right? And then going through the hourly rate of, again, people will say, well, my time's kind of free, right? As like the owner, or they're like, I love it. I don't care. I'm working. Well, that's the mindset. That's what I
Yeah,
know.
no,
I
no,
do.
I understand.
But
I'm just shaking my head.
yeah, no,
That's
no,
it.
no, no. So they're like, to them, 120, no big deal. I'm here anyway. I'm going to help them or I'm doing it for
Yeah.
a group, whatever. But then we like the exercise I love to do is break it down to the hour. And sometimes we find out that this owner is getting paid maybe $3, $4 an hour when we really break it down. And then we start adding like, okay, well, what onboarding did you have to do? What invoicing did you have to do? What did you have to check on your systems? What marketing did you have to do? Right. Keep going on and on and on. And they're like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would definitely be a eureka moment for people. And I think that's such a great tool. I think that it's a great takeaway people can take from listening to this of like actually the breakdown of the actual time that you're working and realizing that like, yeah, it's opportunity cost, isn't it? Like the fact that just the mindset of, oh, well, I'd be working anyway, so I don't really need to make money off this. It's like, yeah, but there are other things that you could be doing with your time. And, for you to have all of the stress of running a studio or a business and getting paid $3 an hour, that's not fair to anybody, including your, like, obviously, most obviously yourself.
Right. What happens more often than not, too, is that I see that owners start to resent a business, especially
Hmm.
when they have employees and they're struggling maybe to pay their employees, or they're paying employees more. That's another thing with our heartfelt entrepreneurs so much, too, is that they want to help them and be there for them, which is great. That's why I want you to be there. But if you don't help you, your business won't be there to support your community, your employees, to pay them, their families. And it's a big responsibility. But they end up starting to resent the business when they start to pay their employees more, and they always think, well, when I grow, when I make more, when I do this. And if we don't have the mindset piece right, the finances piece right, all of our structure, that more disappears.
Yeah, awesome, Kristen. I'm totally with you. The last question that I have for you, maybe as a practical takeaway, um, if someone's listening and let's say they feel shame or anxiety every time they look at their bank account, what's a small thing that they could start doing today to start shifting that and moving things in a more positive direction in feeling around the process?
Well, that's a great question. So this is two-part. The first one is don't stop looking at it. What we need to do is shift the feeling around it, right? We need to shift what that represents. And so continue to look at it, but get a little post-it note, something like that at your desk, like wherever you are, and write on it that this number does not reflect who I am. This number
Wow.
is data. That's it. And that's the biggest point that we want to get about that. This number is purely data. And what they're doing is we're internalizing that is a reflection of who I am, how I operate this business, how I'm running, how worthy I am, what I am to my family, community, all of those things. So write it down. And every time you look at it, just remind yourself that this number does not represent who I am.
That's beautiful. That's such a powerful takeaway that I hope listeners will take with them. Awesome. Well, this has been really fantastic.
Well,
I
thank
love
you.
you're so well versed and you have such practical tips and tools, and I know that it's so great to work with you. Where can people find out more about you and the services that you offer?
Yeah, thank you, Corey. Our website is financialfitnesscoaching.com. Pretty simple and easy. And then we're very active on Instagram, and that's simply financial.fitness.coaching.
Cool. Well, Kristen, I appreciate you so much. And I know that a lot of people will benefit. And I encourage all the listeners to reach out, fix your money mindset story first. Everything will follow. It's crazy because you can fix your money mindset. You can do the exact same thing in your business that you're doing right now. And when you fix your money mindset, you'll just be earning so much more money. So this is really super valuable information. And I really appreciate your time, Kristen.
Thank you, Corey. I appreciate it as well. Take care.